Okay, can everyone hear me? I think we're gonna break into your dinner for just a moment and hear from our closing keynote speaker, who I'm just delighted to welcome to the stage this evening. You know, I just have to share that when I first met Monica and heard Monica speak, it was at an event that we sponsored for the National Food Law Student Network when I was a law student. And I will tell you that I was blown away then, and all the students in the room were too. And so when we were thinking about who to invite to help us wrap up this event, Monica was the obvious choice. And so I'm so delighted that you were able to join us. I will just briefly share that Monica is a globally recognized agricultural lawyer, mediator, and farm advocate. She's also an adjunct professor at Florida State University College of Law, where she teaches agricultural law. Her professional achievements include serving as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and there are actually many more, but I don't want to take up too much time here because I want to allow Monica to deliver her presentation because I know it's going to be a treat. So let's please welcome Monica to the stage.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Gray, for that warm Harvard welcome and introduction. I am Monica Rainge, and I am so excited about being your keynote speaker tonight. I want to just take a moment to thank Dean Goldberg, the Dean of the Harvard Law School. I want to thank Emily Broad-Lieb, the director of the Food Law and Policy Clinic, and her amazing team. Let me just have them stand up for just a moment, and let's give them a big round of applause. They have just done an incredible job of implementing and executing this 10th annual Food Student Leadership Summit. And so I am excited that I've been invited to speak with you, and I know that this has been a long day. This has been a marathon day, and I just want you all to give yourselves a big round of applause for sticking it out and hanging in there to the last session. You know, it is hard to believe that we have covered as much territory as we have over the last 24 hours. We started last evening with an amazing evening of learning and engagement, and we have heard from last night and today some really amazing agricultural leaders across the spectrum. These leaders have addressed a timely and important issues that we are facing in agriculture in our nation. So what else is there for you tonight? When I talked to Gray about what my assignment would be tonight, she said, you know, we really need to have a call to action tonight. And so my task for you tonight is to give you a call of action to inspire your journey of leadership. This is a student leadership summit. But as I look across this beautiful room, I don't just see student leaders. I see change makers. I see those who are ready to activate and go back into rural and agricultural communities across our nation and create the change we need to see. The actions of this current administration have put us as a nation in a historic place. At this very moment, we are at a crossroad for not just agriculture and food, but for the democracy of our country. I am just bold enough to believe that we still have the power to believe in the promise of America. We're not going back. We're going forward. And as I look at the power in this room, the scholars and the lawyers in this room, I believe that you also believe in that promise of America. And so the question for you tonight is, how will you harness your power, your purpose, and your path forward to fight for a food system that is fair and equitable? You know, we gather tonight in this powerful space here at Harvard University. We gather in solidarity, recognizing that when we come together, we have a collective strength. We summarily bring our similarities, our differences, but most of all, we are a force multiplier. And as I think about the fact, last night I heard that this conference is celebrating its 10th year, a decade of bringing together the best and brightest law students in the food and agricultural space. We can celebrate the fact that this conference itself has been a force multiplier. We have activated over 500 law students to go out across from 125 institutions. I think we can give that a round of applause. So clearly there has been a huge return on the investment to ensure that the next generation of agricultural lawyers are ready to activate. So we can deploy you tonight. We know that you are ready. You have shown your resilience and your ability to step up into a leadership role. Our conference celebrates this theme, food and democracy, from policy to plate. And over the course of our discussions today and yesterday, we have really zoomed in on the intersections of food and democracy. And last night, as I listened to the dynamic speakers who really talked about significant issues and laws impacting our food system, we really had the opportunity to take a hard look at where we are, the situation we find ourselves in, and ask ourselves what actions are needed to improve our public health, our climate, equity, food access, and more. And what I'm so encouraged about is the fact that this is a student leadership conference. What does that really mean? When I think about the role of students, especially law students, you have had important, pivotal roles at moments in our nation's history when we needed you to step up. I think about the students who have been at the forefront of social change movements. And as a civil rights lawyer, my mind goes back to those students who were freedom riders down in Mississippi, those students who sat at lunch counters in North Carolina, those students who decided that they would join the Montgomery bus boycott, those students who decided that they would take a stand after George Floyd's death. These are the students who have led when this nation needed moments of social change. These students have had the power to shape the moral conscience of America. And I just believe tonight that this room is full of those type students. Students ready to activate into your communities and be change makers. Tonight, I reflect on my own journey as a student leader. And my goal is really to share a little bit with you about the lessons that I have gleaned from my experiences as a student leader. What does it take to carry out your assignment? And you have a special assignment. No one can do your assignment. And I just believe that someone's life depends on how well you do your assignment. For me, my journey starts in a small town in Georgia, Thomasville, Georgia, where, like many of you, I heard when the commissioner was speaking this afternoon about your involvement in 4-H. And so I was a 4-H'er as well. I had the opportunity to start 4-H at an early age in the 5th grade. And I had seen two older sisters who were also 4-H'ers. My mother and my father were involved in my 4-H journey because they were volunteers in our 4-H chapter. And I'm so excited tonight that I have a special honoree here with me. My mother has come to join me for this occasion. She has truly been the wind beneath my wings, and I'm so honored to have you here, Mom. But when I started out in 4-H, I would do a number of different projects in 4-H, and I ended up going to the district competition and the state competition. I won the state competition in the Breads Project, and I became a master 4-H'er of Georgia. And what I learned from baking hundreds of loaves of bread for my family is that there is one key ingredient that you must have in bread to make it successful. And that is what do you have to have in the bread? You've got to have yeast. I heard it. You got to have yeast in the bread to make it rise. And so I would bake hundreds of loaves of bread, and every time I baked that bread, I was always amazed at how it started out as this little ball, and then once you added that yeast and come back in 2 hours, it is this big. And so I was ready to shape it into rolls and cinnamon rolls, which my family loved. But what that taught me about life was that most things to be successful require accelerators. And so your leadership journey, no matter how bright and smart you are, you will need some accelerators. Those things that will set you apart in your leadership journey. And so when I think about that, my 4-H experience gave me a lot of opportunities to see different experiences. And I have to share that, you know, the project competition came really easy to me. So I decided I wanted to do something hard. I decided one day to go to my 4-H director and I said, I want to join the livestock judging team. So he kind of smiled. He was like, oh, okay. And I didn't grow up on a farm. And no one on the livestock judging team looked like me. But I was up for the challenge. And I said, you know what? I'm going to join this team because this is going to be hard. This is going to be difficult. I'm going to learn something from this experience. And so my livestock judging coach took me on the team, and growing up in South Georgia, he would pick me up from school, which looked a little weird. I'd hop on the 4-H van with the other kids who didn't look like me, and we would go out to farms, and, you know, they would put some animals in the pen, and we'd start livestock judging, and most of what I was learning was from the other kids. How to speak reasons, how to judge the animals. And before you know it, I was going to competitions. And I realized that those competitions, not many of those kids looked like me. In fact, I was the only one who looked like me at those competitions. But I hung in there with it, and I started to learn more jargon. And so one competition, I actually won an award, which I couldn't believe, because I did not have the background that the other kids had. They had been around animals all their lives. So what I learned from that as a leader is that sometimes you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. That these are the kinds of things and opportunities that really pull out your best skills as a lawyer. And that's what it requires to be successful in an environment where you need to create change. The first thing that you have to do is be a little bit uncomfortable. You have to be in a position to reject the status quo. And that's when you are in a position to do your best leadership work. When I think about my own journey, I have to tell people, my story starts with $10. Just $10. Because I was involved in 4-H, my guidance counselor came to me one day and she said, you know, you should think about going to a summer camp at Florida A&M University. And I said, oh, okay, well, how much is it? Because my parents are going to want to know how much it is. And, you know, things are a little tight. And she said, it's $10. I said, $10? We can probably afford that. So I went home and I talked to my mother and I said, Mom, there's a camp at Florida A&M University. It's called Introduction to Agricultural Sciences. And I said, guess what? It's only $10 to go to this camp. She couldn't say no. And so she said, $10? I said, $10, Mom. So she said, yeah, let's do that. So I got back and signed up for the camp, paid the $10, and I was able to attend the Introduction to Agricultural Sciences 1-week camp that Florida A&M University sponsored. Well, I was able to leverage my experiences at that camp, and I learned, I met professors at Florida A&M University, and they said, you have to come to Florida A&M University. And I did go to Florida A&M University. Go Rattlers. And at Florida A&M University, I learned, they're called the Rattlers. I learned to strike. I honed my leadership skills. I was a member of the women's track team where I walked on. I was a student-elected leader on campus, which I called my mom. I said, I'm running for an office on campus, and I said, I need you to bring me peppermint, because I'm going to stand in the cafeteria and pass out peppermints as the kids come through to get their lunches and dinners and breakfast. I ended up winning that election. But what FAMU taught me was that I had what it took to be a top leader, that every opportunity was for me. And so at FAMU, I learned about the opportunity to go to law school at the University of Florida, which is another land-grant university in Florida, and had a chance to go to the University of Florida, study law, and it was really in one pivotal class where we had a guest speaker. You know how guest speakers are, expectations are low. And so this particular guest speaker came in and he said, I do agricultural law. And I said, whoa, I didn't even know that was a thing. And after his discussion, here's a leadership point. I was immediately engaged. He finished talking and I said, I need to meet this guy because I believe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I went up to him and his name was Dr. Michael Alexa. And Dr. Alexa said, I said, do you have anything that I can just work on with you? Do you have anything I can just do some research for you? He said, you know, in fact, I do. I am looking for a research assistant. And so I just went, oh, because that was exactly what I wanted to hear. And so I started being his research assistant at the University of Florida. And I ended up authoring my first legal publication with him on Florida fence law. And so that was an amazing opportunity to see, wow, I love this. I enjoy this. I mean, I am vested in this now. And so I was talking to Dr. Alexa, who became really one of my mentors, and he said, you really should think about going to do an LLM. And I was like, okay, what is that? So he said, well, at the University of Arkansas, they have a Master of Laws program in agricultural law. And I looked into it, and sure enough, I was able to apply for that program, and I found myself for the first time going to the state of Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and met really the most dynamic team of professors and students to nurture me into this role as an agricultural lawyer. So I am truly grateful, thank you, for the experience that I had at the University of Arkansas to become an agricultural lawyer. Well, it was during that time in law school that I had an internship experience with a nonprofit organization called the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. And I would come to learn that the Federation was on the cutting edge of the civil rights movement. They were born out of the civil rights movement, and they were the first organization who had fought for voting rights, but they realized once we got voting rights, we still did not have economic rights. And so they were fighting for Black farmers to get economic rights. And they started organizing back in 1967 farmers into agricultural cooperatives. And that was the main thrust of their organization. But they also were working on a big problem at that time, and that was Black land loss. Because what I learned was at the height of 1910, Black farmers owned about 15 million acres in this country. Well, somehow, Black farmers lost most of that land, and the number today is probably under 3 million acres. As some of you may know, that in 1925, Black farmers, there were about 1,925,000 Black farmers in this country. Today, there are less than 40,000 Black farmers. And so the Federation of Southern Cooperatives has been that organization fighting for policy and legislation to improve accessibility for Black and brown farmers who have been systemically denied access to USDA programs. And so when I finished my LLM, I got a call from them, and they said, you know what? Shirley Sherrod, who is a giant in agriculture, she is heading up our Albany, Georgia office, and she has decided to go on a one-year sabbatical. We would like for you to come and lead the office in Albany, Georgia, while she is gone on a fellowship. And so what I didn't know was this was right about 1999. And what I didn't know was this was right about the time that Black farmers had, the discrimination at the hands of the USDA had reached a fever pitch. And so when I took that job in Albany, Georgia, I started organizing Black farmers to get on buses, to ride all night long, to protest at the USDA. On those all-night bus trips, I can remember talking to farmers about their experiences in USDA offices where their applications for loans were torn up in their faces. And they were treated like second-class citizens. And so it was from those experiences where we sat on those buses all night and we would sing those freedom songs, fired up, ready to go. Fired up, ready to go. And on those buses, we would actually be talking about who might get arrested at those protests. And so I'm kind of thinking to myself, I'm a little scared now. I'm trying to get into a bar. I probably don't need to report to the bar that I just got arrested in Washington, D.C. But it taught me another lesson about leadership. You see, leadership has a cost. Leadership requires risk-taking. And so any progress that's made always requires a bit of risk. And I was willing to take those risks because when I heard from those students, from the farmers on those buses and what their experiences had been, it was worth us going to DC to do those protests at the USDA. What I realized when I was working at the Federation was they were an organization who would fight for farmers' rights. And I remember, too, being under the close mentorship of Ralph Page, Jerry Pinnock, Cornelius Blanding, John Zippert. These were foot soldiers in the civil rights movement and had been leading the movement to try to get rights for minority farmers. I remember in 2011, they said, we're going to meet with the Secretary of Agriculture. At that time, Secretary Tom Vilsack. They said, we want you to go along with us. And I said, okay. And so we get to Washington, D.C., and we're waiting. You can just tell how important this meeting is. We're waiting to go inside a conference room to meet with the Secretary of Agriculture. And I'm just happy to be there because I don't know anything. But I'm happy to be in a place where people are bringing me into the room. And sometimes your journey is just going to be about those people who are willing to bring you into the room. And so I got to the room, and we're sitting at this big, long conference table with the Secretary of Agriculture. And I'm thinking to myself, I think I made it, Mama. And I'm listening to the discussion of policy and why and the advocacy of why the Secretary needs to be aware of some of the situations that are going on with minority farmers all across the country. And so I left that meeting not knowing that that same table that they brought me to, I would be sitting there as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the USDA. Thank you. What I learned from that moment was that you will meet people who will be mentors. They will be champions. They will be sponsors. They will bring you into rooms that you never dreamed you could go into. They are preparing you for your next assignment. And so when I think about some of those people, we have even people here that I've been a student of their work. Sarah Vogel, where are you? Sarah's been a champion for farmers, and her work in helping farmers to get debt relief during the farm crisis was revolutionary. It was pioneering. And I had the opportunity to sit on the Farmer Legal Action Group board with Sarah and watch her in action, sit at her feet, and just be in awe of Sarah Vogel. Savvy Horn. Savvy has been a force in working for the rights of farmers, working in the debt crisis, and what you probably don't even know is that she has been a pioneer in saving Black land. Having the encouragement of working with Savvy across organizations like the Rural Coalition, National Family Farmer Coalition. She has been a consummate advocate and attorney. And I have gained so much from her friendship, her mentoring over the years. Thank you, Savvy. I have to mention Stephen Carpenter. You see, Stephen is that guy. He is smart as hell. He's that guy. And he's the kind of guy that when he said something, you know it's going to be provocative. It's like you just wait for it. Because Stephen is the type of person, you know, when you look at his work on cases like Pigford, where he served as the ombudsman, I watched him and how he operated in that case. His heart and his passion for this work is unparalleled. And I was so excited that I was on the Farmer Legal Action Board because it gave me the opportunity to really get an up-close and personal look at the way this guy operates. It was amazing. He's a rock star. And then, you know, fast forward, we had a chance to do quite a bit of work together, and I'll talk about a little bit more on my signature project in the administration. Susan Schneider. I was in Susan's first class at the University of Arkansas. And that year, Susan and her husband, Chris Kelly, started their careers at the University of Arkansas. And I know the first week we had Professor Neil Hamilton, who came to teach us introduction to agricultural law. And, you know, I think about the fact that I was being taught by leaders who were world-renowned in agricultural law, and how that really gave me a solid foundation in agricultural law. And I am so grateful for that because Susan, Chris, Neil, you all made such a huge difference in my life, and I appreciate that. And so as now, I am a professor at Florida State College of Law, and my greatest joy was to be able to call my professor, Professor Schneider, and say, I am using your textbook this semester. That was a full circle moment for me. And just realizing that, wow, this has been a journey. And now I am in a position where I can impact the next generation of agricultural lawyers. So I have with me one of my students. Chad, just stand up real quick. This is one of my students from Florida State Law. And I actually had two students coming. They were very excited. One got sick at the last minute and could not make the trip. But I'm so excited to be here and being able to contribute to the next generation of lawyers. I tell you, when I got to the USDA, I was excited about the fact that President Biden said on day one, he signed an executive order that he wanted to advance equity in underserved communities. We would center equity in everything that we did. All of our decisions, all of our programs, all of our processes. We wanted to do a top-to-bottom review at the USDA and ask ourselves the really difficult questions. What role should government have in ensuring that all people have access to programs and services and opportunities? And so I had the opportunity, and this is how $10 becomes $2 billion. My signature project at the USDA was the Discrimination Financial Assistance Program. That program, which was authorized through the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022, allowed USDA to create a program where we could acknowledge that the USDA had, in fact, discriminated against some of its customers. Now, it wasn't a race-based program, so anyone could apply for these funds. But we were able to implement this program where we got $2 billion out to 43,000 farmers across the United States. And that was no easy feat, because we faced many challenges from groups who thought that we should not acknowledge the problem. What problem? That we should not acknowledge that there was a history of discrimination that existed at the United States Department of Agriculture. Well, quite frankly, it had already been acknowledged through previous lawsuits and claim processes, because we'd already had Pickford 1, Enraged Black Farmers, we'd already had Keep Siegel, Love, Garcia, other actions which had acknowledged essentially there was discrimination at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And so tonight I think about my journey from that $10 my parents were willing to invest, and how that $10 became a $2 billion impact. That is a force multiplier. That is why conferences like this tonight are so significant, because this will bring a return on investment that we can't even imagine yet. And so what I want to leave you with tonight is what we have heard over the course of 2 days. And what I really like is that other speakers have given you some ways that you can activate, that you can build your own toolkit from this conference. And so I was kind of taking notes as I heard some of the other speakers, and here's kind of what I heard some of them say. Ways that you can activate beyond this conference. Number one, share a meal and share your story. That's an easy one. That's a low-hanging fruit. Share a meal and share your story. Number two, listen to a farmer and help them navigate the challenges of the current landscape. Number three, write a letter to your elected official and then show up. Go see them. You will be surprised at how much power you have, even as a law student, when you show up to your congressman's office or your congresswoman's office. This fall season, while we are still trying to get at least a skinny farm bill, they need to hear from you. Your advocacy is important. So this fall, take opportunities to join a legislative fly-in into Washington, D.C. Take an opportunity to visit your state capital and share your advocacy positions. Get involved with a grassroots farm organization. They need you. They need you. Even if it's just calling members to keep them informed about what is going on out there. You know more than the average person about farm, food, and agricultural issues. Raise your hand. Use your voice. Start organizing within your community. As I said, I started organizing farmers, and I didn't even realize that was a thing. But I realized there were people who all agreed that they needed justice. And they started to form and organize around their common purpose. That's what organizing is really about. I want some of you to think about writing an op-ed for your newspaper. Again, you are prolific writers, so we need your voice writing for op-eds in newspapers, whether it's a local or state or even national newspapers. We need you to jump into the Farm Bill discussion and advocate for a better food system. I need you to find a mentor. How many of you out there have at least one mentor that you can call and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, can I bounce an idea off of you? I don't see but a few hands. Okay, I see more hands now. Excellent. Your mentors are very important. These are the people who will champion you, they will guide you, they will sponsor you, they will bring you into rooms that you need to be in. They will speak your name in rooms that you don't walk in. And that is powerful. That is a force multiplier. So I need you to get a mentor right away. And I'm willing to be some of your mentors. So please, if you need a mentor, see me after the program. And if all else fails, and you've tried all of these other things, my charge to you tonight is simple. Run for public office. Run for public office. You are ready to activate. You have invested time over the last 24 hours because you want more. You are ready to demand more out of our food and agricultural system. Go forth and do well. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. So I think we have a little time. If anyone has a question for Monica that they'd like to ask, I'll come to you with the microphone. Does anyone?
Hi, Monica. Thank you so much for being with us over the past 2 days. My question to you is how, as a leader, you find yourself balancing humility and audacity and understanding and respecting institutions and respecting farmers and their autonomy, but also having the audacity to pursue radical change in a system in which change is very slow.
Great question. Great question. You know, leadership requires a certain degree of humility. You have to be able to speak with everyone with a common man's touch and understand and be empathetic about what they are going through. And that's why I like to tell stories about my experiences riding on those buses with the farmers all night. Putting myself in their shoes to understand exactly what their struggles were. And I think, you know, a life of service starts with humility. And I think that's one of the reasons why my parents always emphasized service to us. The benefit of hard work. I didn't tell this story, but when I was a student at FAMU, I worked on the farm at FAMU. That was my work-study job. I had a dirty job. I had to take care of the goat and the sheep at FAMU, which meant I wasn't as glamorous then. I walked to class most of the time smelling like the goat and the sheep. And, you know, what that taught me was if you're willing to get a little dirty, God can elevate your purpose to something really special. And so I never shy away from experiences where I need to know where my client is and I need to know exactly where they are. And so I think we have to constantly understand that we are here for the people. We are here for the people. They are our sole purpose. And that's what drives every decision that we make. And so we fight for justice on behalf of the people.
Ooh, was there a question back here? Sarah.
This goes back to when I first met you, Monica. Do you still have your fur coat?
I still do have that coat.
Yeah.
The joke was always, I was on Flag's board, and we would meet in Minnesota every year, right? And I don't know why, but the meeting was in December. And that was kind of weird for a Florida girl. So I had on every coat that I owned for these meetings. And I can remember, Stephen, you probably remember this, the year that it was 40 degrees below zero. It was a vortex. And so I had every coat on that I owned and I could find. And so they never stopped letting me remember that I had on this fur coat. Hilarious.
Oh, we've got a question over here.
Thank you again. I spoke to Miss Savvy and also Miss Sarah, and I just thank them for being trailblazers. But I see I should be thanking you too, because you're definitely a trailblazer. So thank you so much. My question tonight is, I've heard a lot about the University of Arkansas and their LLM program. Oh my goodness, like whoop whoop. Okay, hello. So again, like I said before, wasn't quite sure about agricultural law. Now you guys are telling me I need to get an LLM in ag law. And aside from your experiences, how was your LLM, or how has your LLM in agriculture advanced your work?
Great question. The LLM was a game changer. It puts you on a stage where people expect you to be a leader in agricultural law. So that was the best decision that I could have ever made. It was a wonderful accelerator. It was that yeast. It was the yeast in the plan. And once I was a part of the LLM program and the LLM community, it connected me instantly to other resources. So if you are kind of thinking about the LLM, I would strongly suggest you talk with Susan Schneider about going to do the LLM at the University of Arkansas. It's only a one-year program, but in that 1 year, it is a game changer.
Any hands that I missed? Oh, all right, Felicia. I'm coming, helping me get my extra steps in.
I'm curious about your kind of change in positions from being in the USDA to challenge them on demand justice for Black farmers, and then becoming, the person on the other side of the table. How did you feel about that change in position? Any, surprises or challenges that came with it?
Great question. I have always really been a boots on the ground practitioner. I tell people I like to practice law in boots and not suits, because that's the advocacy side of me. Is I want to be there. I want to hold my farmers' hands and walk with them and work with them. So the elevation to the Department of Agriculture was different, because what I had to realize was I was being elevated for a different purpose. Instead of just fighting for farmers from the outside, I now had an opportunity to get an inside track, to really understand how the machine works. And I must say that I had a lot of misconceptions about how the USDA works, because I think you kind of go in there and you're like, I'm going to do this, this, and this. But the USDA government, period, is a big ship. It turns very slowly. And so what you realize is you will have, if you're lucky, 4 years in this seat. And you may not have the opportunity to get all 10 things done on your list. You may actually plant the seeds for about 5 of those things, and that may be a great result, a great outcome for your time in USDA. But I believe that we were able to accomplish something big with the Discrimination Financial Assistance Program. And I was able to stay for 4 years at the agency. And President Biden declared that this was a legacy project. He had said he wanted to address racial discrimination within the agency, and we were able to accomplish. So I think my biggest takeaway, while I love my service and my leadership at the USDA, I kind of look forward to getting back in the trenches. And so now running my own agricultural practice in Tallahassee, Florida, and being able to talk with farmers and meet with farmers, I'm back to my first love.
So my question in thinking about what the federal government does and or does not do, the ability to maybe steer the ship a little bit and drop those seeds, but not the ones that have been patented and that you can't rewash, not those seeds. Usually we hear like career civil service people, go through different administrations and those kinds of things. This feels in my lifetime, since the 80s, of course, to be at a precipice that we haven't been in the politicalization and the polarization. So for those of us who have maybe considered a career or maybe considering avoiding a career, what advice would you give if you're coming out of law school, most of us, in this administration?
I think that there are opportunities that exist. Sometimes challenges are challenges, but they may be opportunities just turned inside out. And I would have conversations with people who said to me after this administration, they're like, are you going to help this next administration? And I just kind of looked at them and they said, no, I'm serious. Are you going to do something? Because they need a person like you to help guide some of the things that they're going to be doing. And they really got me to thinking a little bit differently. This is, running a government is hard work. And I feel like when you have good ideas, those ideas apply no matter who's in charge, what administration. So, I'm not taking the position that I should sit on the sidelines simply because it's a different administration. There is still value in bringing your ideas to the table, no matter who's in the White House. Because what we want to accomplish, those are not blue or red goals. Those are goals for farmers. And so we want to continue to bring those ideas to the table. And if you have an opportunity to do that, take it. Great question.
Well, that seems like a wonderful place to wrap it up, Monica. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for spending some time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, really, always inspiring and such a pleasure. Yeah. So, you want to take a photo of Monica and Emily? Want to jump in the photo? While they're taking a photo, we're gonna wrap it up here shortly, and Emily is gonna send us off with some closing remarks. But I also just want to say thank you. No. Yeah, I'm an emotional attorney, so we're just gonna leave it at that. Yeah, but yeah, really, from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I don't have that much to say, but I did want to take a moment to come back up and I think we've said a lot of thanks. One group that didn't get thanked that I want to thank now are the students who are all here, who have been amazing. And I'll just say, first of all, being here all day, I know it was a long day. We really packed it in. We wanted to make it worth your while. I hope that it really was. And I will say, having talked to a number of the students, but also to all the faculty and speakers and, folks that are here, every single person here is this is so meaningful. It's so important. Everyone is here because of you. So we're all here just rooting for you to, take one of the pieces of advice you got. You got great advice just now from Monica. I mean, I was like, I'm going to take that advice. So, but I think there's things you can all do, whether it's in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term, to kind of stay involved in this. And I will say too, whether this, like you heard a lot from people who are making their lives, doing work in food and agriculture. I hope that some of you do that. I know that not everyone will. There are ways to stay involved. Like we heard great things that even if your career path takes you in a different direction, there are ways to give back, whether it's through doing pro bono, being on a board of something, like bringing your knowledge of this field, your legal knowledge to like help a local organization or a state or national organization. As you heard, all those things like speaking to elected officials, writing op-eds, you can do all those things no matter what you end up doing as your full-time job. So I hope that you took away both something you can do in your career, and then I think just, a couple other things. I mean, one was, I know one of the things we really tried to show over the course of these 2 days was the breadth of this space, which is both what's hard about it and what's great about it. There's so many ways to get involved. One of the things we think a lot in the teaching that we do here with students and our work in the clinic is that we're really looking at this as a system, and that means you might not be an expert in all the pieces of it, but it means that there's lots of ways to get involved. And I think keeping in mind how these things interconnect and keeping in mind this ecosystem and these resources and connections so that you can, whenever it is that you figure out what it is that you want to do, finding the ways it connects back up with these other parts and how to make each part move further and do more and not have negative impacts on the other parts of it. In the short term, a couple of things you can do to stay involved. One big one you heard earlier, the National Food Law Student Network, I know we have some of the leaders here. They are looking for more leaders to get involved. So getting involved. And then I think if you have ideas for how to keep this momentum going, that is what the network is doing. And we've seen over the years, the network has grown and built a new direction. So if you're coming out of this like, I wish we had heard from this speaker or that topic, or you heard about opportunities for mentorship, you have ideas of how to do better remote networking to make that happen, or whatever it is, like that's a great opportunity to get involved in that and help make some of those things come to fruition and come to life. We are gonna reach back out to you for a survey to get your input for today. So any thoughts you have, any advice you have for us, any feedback for us. We are gonna be hiring summer interns. I talked before about, a number of folks who are here that have worked with us over time. So that'll be coming out. And actually I know a lot of the other organizations here are, will hire for interns, or you heard about the LLM program. Like there's lots of ways that you can kind of take your work one step further. So those are just a few. I mean, I think there's lots of ways to do it. And I know everyone here is willing to stay connected, to be a resource, to be your mentor, to help you find one. If students sometimes come to me and say, can you help me with this? I'm like, that is actually not my area, but I know exactly who you should talk to. So feel free to use us for that. In addition to thanking you, I want to thank again Gray and the other staff who organized this. It has been really a labor of love, as you can tell, and very emotional, but has been really, really wonderful. And I want to thank all of the speakers and faculty who are here and have spent the last 2 days with us together. I think the only other thing I need to do is tell you when the shuttle bus is. Yeah, so the shuttle bus, for which we're going to prioritize students for the shuttle bus. So let's start with that, but it's leaving at 9 o'clock at the Methodist Church at 1555 Mass Ave. So that would be, if you go out of the building and go left, there's a church like a little way, I don't know if it was where it was last night too, but yeah, okay, same place. So just go there. So you have a little bit of time to stay and hang out and talk to Monica if you want her to be your mentor, or talk to me, or talk to Gray, or talk to any of the other staff and faculty who are all here that you met earlier. And I just want to celebrate all of you for making this such a special and amazing event. I'm so, so grateful. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the time hanging out here for a little on your trips back. Thank you.